Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're exploring early childhood thinking, those incredible years between 2 and 6.
Absolutely. It's mind-blowing how much is happening in their brains.
You said it.
Mm,
I'm really hoping we can get a handle on the main theories and research.
Definitely. And of course, how it all applies to real life too, right?
Exactly. After all, that's what really matters. Okay, let's jump right in. This chapter starts with executive function and calls it the brain's control center. What's the deal with that?
Well, think of executive function, or EF, as like a conductor of an orchestra, you know? It helps kids manage all the different parts of their thinking, and there are three core parts: working memory, inhibition, and flexibility. Working memory is like,
A sticky note to help remember things.
yeah, exactly. Like remembering what they had for breakfast or where they put their shoes.
Oh, so that's why my niece can never find her favorite stuffed animal,
Yeah.
always losing it.
Yeah.
But what about those other two parts? Inhibition and flexibility.
So inhibition is the self-control part. It's what stops a child from like grabbing a toy or hitting someone when they're angry. And then you have flexibility, which helps kids adapt to changes.
Like when a game changes or if they have to share a toy,
Hmm.
instead of just getting stuck on wanting it themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like this mental toolkit for managing impulses and focus, making decisions. The chapter says early childhood is like the time for developing these skills. Any idea why that is?
Well, during this time, their brains are making connections so fast. Think of it like a superhighway, like under construction, with new lanes being added all the time. Things like playing games with rules or even conversations can really strengthen those connections.
Wow, so it's not just about letting them run wild and have fun. You really need to challenge their brains.
Exactly. Early interactions and experiences really make a difference.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to Piaget. The chapter dives into his stages of cognitive development, specifically that pre-operational stage for kids between 2 and 6.
Ah, yes. This is where imagination really takes off. They start using symbols and language, but they're thinking, well, it's still tied to what they can see and experience directly.
So like little artists, but not quite scientists.
Exactly. And Piaget highlighted four things about this stage: centration, focus on appearance, static reasoning, and irreversibility. These can lead to some, let's say, interesting behaviors.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with centration. What's that all about?
Well, centration is when a child only focuses on one part of something. A simple example is a kid insisting their dad can't also be a brother because in their minds, he's only a dad.
That makes sense. My nephew was super confused when I said my sister was going to be a mom. He just couldn't understand how someone could be both.
Exactly. And then there's focus on appearance. Kids at this stage are easily fooled by looks.
Ah, so that's why my niece freaked out when she got a haircut. Thought she turned into a boy. Even after I explained it, she was still upset.
Yep, that's focus on appearance. And your example of her refusing to eat a sandwich with a tiny speck of lettuce, even after you took it off, that's irreversibility. To them, once something changes, it's changed forever.
Wow, this is so helpful. Knowing all this can prevent so many arguments, right? It's not that they're being difficult, it's just how their brains are working.
Exactly. We need to adjust to their development, not the other way around.
Now, the chapter also mentions Vygotsky in his sociocultural theory. He had some different ideas about learning, focusing a lot on social interaction.
Right. Vygotsky saw kids as little apprentices. They're always learning from the people around them. It's what he called guided participation, where someone more knowledgeable provides support.
So it's like having a mentor or guide, someone who can help them learn and grow.
Yeah, and he called the area where they can learn with help the zone of proximal development.
Okay, that sounds a little complicated. Can you break that down a bit?
It's actually pretty simple. It's the sweet spot, between what a kid can do on their own and what they can do with a little help. Think of it like scaffolding. You provide support at first, but as the child learns, you gradually remove it.
Ah, like training wheels for the brain.
Exactly. And Vygotsky believed that language was huge in this. Through talking, stories, even just everyday chatter, kids start to understand new things.
I've noticed that when I talk to my niece about her playing, she starts using bigger words and more complex ideas.
That's Vygotsky in action. It shows how important it is to talk to kids even when they're really little.
This reminds me of something else the chapter mentioned, over-rumination. It's about how kids copy adults, even when the actions are totally unnecessary.
Oh yeah, they do that all the time. Even if they could do something much easier, if they see an adult doing it a certain way, they'll try to copy it.
Like that time my nephew was trying to open a jar the exact same way his dad did, even though he could have just asked for help.
That's a perfect example. It shows how much kids want to learn from us, even if we're not always doing things the smartest way.
And that brings us to a topic I find so fascinating. Children as little scientists. The chapter says kids are like natural theorists, always trying to figure out how the world works.
That's what we call theory. Kids are always coming up with ideas, testing them out, and then changing their minds based on what they learn, just like scientists.
It's not just about taking in information, it's about trying to understand it and explain it.
Exactly. And one of the most important theories they develop is theory of mind. It usually happens around age 4. It's a big deal because it means they start understanding that other people have their own thoughts and beliefs, which might be different from their own.
It's like they realize that everyone has their own world inside their head.
Yeah, and there are some cool experiments, like the false belief task, that show this shift in thinking. In one version, a kid sees someone hide a toy in a box. Then, when that person isn't looking, the toy is moved to a different box.
And then the kid is asked where the person will look for the toy.
Right. A kid who hasn't developed theory of mind will say they'll look in the box where the toy actually is. But a kid who has developed theory of mind will say they'll look in the first box because that's where they think it is.
That's so interesting. It shows that they're starting to understand other people's perspectives.
And that's crucial for developing social and emotional skills.
The chapter also says that theory of mind and executive function are actually connected.
They are. Theory of mind takes a lot of brain power, and those executive function skills help kids handle all the different perspectives and make sense of social situations.
Wow, it's incredible how much is going on in those little brains.
I know, right? And this is just scratching the surface. There's still so much more to learn about early childhood.
Well, I'm definitely ready to dive deeper.
So much to explore, like all the different types of early childhood education programs.
Yeah, there's so much variety out there. It can be kind of overwhelming. I'm curious about those child-centered programs, Montessori, Reggio Emilia, and Waldorf. What makes each of them unique?
They each have a really different philosophy. Like Montessori, imagine a classroom with all these really cool materials that kids can just pick up and explore, learn through doing.
Sounds like my kind of classroom.
Right. It's all about self-directed learning. Kids choose what interests them and they go at their own pace. Teachers are there to guide, of course, but the child is really in charge.
So less about direct instruction and more about setting up the right environment.
Exactly. And it's not just academics. They learn practical life skills, too, like getting dressed, preparing snacks, even taking care of the environment.
That's so cool. It's really about the whole child, not just their ABCs and 123s. What about Reggio Emilia?
Ah, Reggio Emilia. These schools are all about beautiful environments. Imagine light-filled spaces, natural materials, and kids' artwork everywhere.
Sounds like an art studio.
In a way, it is. They really emphasize project-based learning in art. Kids might spend weeks exploring a single topic, and they express what they learn through art.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
What about Waldorf schools? They seem a bit different.
Waldorf schools, yeah, they're all about imagination and creativity. Their classrooms have this cozy feel, lots of natural materials, soft lighting, and a big focus on storytelling, music, movement, and nature.
It sounds almost magical.
It can be. They really respect developmental stages, recognizing that kids learn differently at different ages. Not so much pressure on academics in the early years, more about creative play and social emotional development and connecting with nature.
It's a gentler approach.
You could say that. Now, of course, you also have the teacher-directed programs, which are more common. They tend to be more structured with a bigger focus on academics, getting those kids ready for traditional schooling.
You mentioned that those draw from behaviorist principles. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. Behaviorism is all about observable behaviors and using reinforcement to learn things. So in a teacher-directed program, you might see a lot of repetition, really clear expectations and rewards for doing things the right way.
Makes sense. It's a more traditional approach.
Right. And while some people think it's too rigid or that it stifles creativity, structure and clear expectations can really help some kids, especially the ones who really like routine.
It's all about finding what works best for the individual child.
Right, absolutely. And that can be really tough for parents. The chapter gives some good tips on choosing a preschool.
Oh, I'm definitely taking notes on this. What are some key things parents should keep in mind?
Well, first of all, visit the program. Actually go there, see the classroom, talk to the teachers, get a feel for the environment. Does it feel warm, welcoming, stimulating?
Yeah, trust your gut, right?
Exactly. And ask questions. Talk to the teachers about their philosophy, what they teach, how they handle discipline. Find out about the teacher's qualifications and experience. Watch how the kids interact with each other. Are they happy? Do they seem engaged? Are there opportunities for both structured activities and free play?
So many things to consider. And then there's cost, location, hours.
Right. Those are all important. And don't be shy about asking about scholarships or financial aid. Choosing a preschool is a big decision, so it's worth taking the time to find the right fit.
You know, as we're talking about all these different programs, one thing stands out. They all seem to agree on the importance of play.
You got it. Play is absolutely crucial. It's not just fun and games, it's how kids learn about the world. They build social skills, they develop their imaginations.
Play is their work.
Exactly. And there are all kinds of play that help them grow and learn in different ways. You have sensor motor play, where babies and toddlers are using their senses and movements to explore, like, shaking a rattle or splashing in puddles.
And then pretend play, all about imagination.
Oh, pretend play is so important. It helps them develop language skills, social emotional skills, and even problem-solving abilities. They get to try on different roles and experiment with social situations, express themselves, all in a safe space.
And then you have games with rules, which become more important as they get older.
Right. Those help kids learn about taking turns, following directions. It's great for their executive function skills, planning, thinking strategically, controlling impulses.
My niece gets so into it when we play games. It's like a whole different side of her comes out.
It's amazing what play can do. And it's not just about having opportunities for play. It's about creating an environment that encourages play.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about the spaces where kids play. Are they interesting? Do they make kids want to play? Are there open-ended materials that spark their imagination? Do the adults play with them in a way that's supportive?
So it's about creating a space where creativity can flourish.
Yes, and sometimes the best play is the kind that the kids come up with on their own. We don't have to structure everything.
Giving them that freedom is so important.
Now let's talk about something that can be a challenge. Language development. The chapter mentions language loss, especially when families speak a language other than the dominant language at home.
Oh, this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. My brother-in-law's family is bilingual, and they want their kids to speak English fluently, but also maintain their native language.
It's a common concern. The research shows that the best thing to do is create a strong bilingual environment.
What does that look like in practice?
Encouraging families to speak their native language at home and making sure the child is also exposed to the dominant language, through preschool, for example.
Creating a world where both languages are important.
Exactly. And you know what? Bilingual kids often do better in certain areas, like attention switching. It's like their brains are getting a workout from going back and forth between languages.
That's incredible. So being bilingual is like a superpower.
You could say that. There's even evidence that it might protect against cognitive decline later in life.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, back to preschool. There's so much debate about what's the best approach. Any advice for parents who are trying to figure this out?
It's all about understanding what each approach is really about, and then deciding what fits your family's values and your child's needs. There's no one right answer.
No magic formula.
Right. And most programs actually combine elements of both child-centered and teacher-directed approaches.
Finding that balance is key.
And even within the same approach, quality can be really different.
So it's not enough to just choose a type of preschool like Montessori.
Yeah.
You really have to look at each individual program.
Exactly. Look for programs with great teachers, a stimulating environment, a curriculum that makes sense for young kids. And speaking of research on early childhood education, there's some really impressive evidence about how much good these programs can do, especially for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Like Head Start, right?
Yeah.
That program that helps low-income families.
Yes. Head Start has shown amazing results. Kids who participate are more likely to graduate from high school, go to college, and even earn more money later in life.
That's incredible. So these early interventions can have such a long-lasting impact.
They really can. And there are other programs like the Perry Preschool Project and the Abecedarian Project that have shown incredible long-term benefits. These programs usually involve a mix of things like care at a center, visits at home, and even education for parents.
So it's a much broader approach to supporting families.
Exactly. And the results are remarkable. Kids who were in these programs showed big improvements in their thinking skills, social emotional development, and how well they did in school. And these benefits continued into adulthood.
Wow. It's like an investment that keeps on giving.
Exactly. And even less intensive programs can make a difference. Studies show that kids who go to high-quality preschool are more likely to be ready for kindergarten, both academically and socially.
So no matter what, giving kids a good start in those early years really pays off.
And that's why we need to support policies that make sure all kids have access to high-quality early childhood education.
It's an investment in our future. Speaking of which, parents and caregivers play such a huge role in early childhood development.
Absolutely. We wear so many hats: teacher, cheerleader, playmate, and of course, we're the ones providing love and support. This chapter reminds us that one of the most important things we can do is make sure kids are surrounded by language. Talk to them, sing songs, read stories, have conversations.
They soak up so much just by listening to us, don't they?
They really do, and it's never too early to start reading to them. Even babies benefit from hearing those sounds and feeling close to you.
Make it part of your routine. And don't be afraid to have fun with it. Silly voices, sound effects, letting your child turn the pages.
The more you make it enjoyable, the more they'll love books. And that love of books opens so many doors.
And we can't forget about play.
Definitely. Create a safe and stimulating play environment, indoors and outdoors. Give them lots of different materials. Let them be in charge of their play. Try not to overstructure things.
Let those imaginations run wild.
And remember, you're their biggest role model. Show them the behaviors you want them to learn. Create a loving home. And be present. Put down your phone, turn off the TV, really be there with them.
Those early years are so precious.
Now, let's think about the people who work with young children, early childhood educators.
The chapter has some good advice for them too, right? About creating those high-quality learning environments.
One of the big takeaways is that young kids learn best by doing things. So instead of just using worksheets and making them memorize things, give them chances to learn through play, exploration, and discovery.
Set up those learning centers. Blocks, puzzles, art supplies. Let them build and create and figure things out.
And the classroom itself is a learning tool. Make it inviting and stimulating, lots of natural light. Put up the kids' artwork. Create cozy reading nooks. Bring in nature.
Make it feel like a home away from home.
Exactly, and foster that sense of community. Set clear rules and expectations, but make sure there's kindness, empathy, and cooperation.
Give them chances to work together, help each other out, and celebrate each other's successes.
And remember, kids learn best from adults they trust. Build those relationships. Show them you care. Create a classroom where they feel valued.
So that positive environment is as important as the curriculum.
Absolutely. When it comes to assessing how they're doing, remember, it doesn't have to be formal or stressful. Just watch them, listen to them, talk to them. That's how you really see what they're learning and how they're developing.
So much can be learned just by observing.
Exactly. And share your observations with families, celebrate their progress, and see where they might need some extra help. Assessment should be a way to help kids learn and grow.
Now, let's talk about some questions that come up a lot around early childhood education. A lot of parents wonder if preschool is really necessary for all kids.
While some families decide to wait or do things differently, research shows that good preschool programs are really beneficial. Kids who go to high-quality preschool are more likely to be ready for kindergarten. They usually have better language skills, social-emotional skills. They're just better prepared for school in general.
Sounds like it can give them a real head start.
It can. And while the benefits are especially important for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, all kids can benefit from the experiences and learning opportunities that good preschools offer.
Another worry is the cost. Preschool can be really expensive.
It's true. The cost can be a problem for a lot of families. But investing in early childhood education is an investment in the future. Those long-term benefits, things like higher earning potential, lower crime rates, better health, they really outweigh the costs.
It's an investment for everyone, not just the individual family.
And there are often programs that can help families with the costs.
So don't give up just because it seems expensive.
Okay.
Let's talk about what we can do to make sure all kids have access to high-quality early childhood education.
The first step is learning about the issues and the research. Learn about the different programs, the benefits, the challenges.
Educate ourselves.
Right. The more we know, the better we can advocate for change. And don't be afraid to share what you learn with others. Talk to your friends and family, community leaders.
Write to your representatives, go to school board meetings, support organizations that are working to improve early childhood education.
Your voice makes a difference.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. I have a whole new understanding of what's happening in those little brains, and I have some concrete ideas about how to support their development.
Me too. The big takeaway for me is that early childhood is a time of so much potential. The things kids experience in these years can really shape their lives.
So let's all do what we can to create a world where all kids have the chance to reach their full potential.
Absolutely.
Wow, we've really explored a lot, haven't we? Everything from how their brains work to all the different preschool options out there. Early childhood is just such a busy time for learning and growing.
It really is. And you know what I love about this stuff? It's not just theory. Understanding these ideas can actually change how we interact with kids in our daily lives.
That's what's been so great about this whole deep dive. It's like, I have a new perspective on the kids in my life.
Exactly. Like, imagine a kid having a meltdown because their friend won't share. Remembering Piaget's idea about egocentrism can make you a lot more patient.
Instead of getting frustrated, I can focus on helping them understand and express those big feelings.
Right. And then you can gently guide them towards sharing.
And for teachers, Vygotsky's zone of proximal development is a great tool.
Absolutely. It helps you figure out what a kid can learn with a little help. You might give them a hint, break the task into smaller steps, or have them work with a classmate who's a little more advanced.
So it's about meeting them where they're at and then helping them take that next step.
And remembering the power of play. That can change everything. Instead of always telling kids what to do, we can give them space to explore and use their imaginations.
I know it's hard, but sometimes we have to resist that urge to jump in and fix things. The best learning often happens when we step back and let them lead.
Totally agree. And it's not just about letting them play, it's also about creating the right environment. Do we have things that encourage creativity and problem solving? Do we get excited about their questions? Do we play and explore right alongside them?
It's about being a co-explorer, rediscovering the world through their eyes.
And probably the most important thing, just watch them. Pay attention to how they play, talk, and interact. You'll learn so much about how they think and how they're developing.
Each kid is like a fascinating puzzle, and the more we learn about how their minds work, the better we can support them on their journey.
Well said. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Before we go, let's leave our listeners with something to think about.
Knowing what we now know about early childhood thinking, how can we make learning environments and experiences that tap into their natural curiosity, their creativity, their love of learning?
Imagine classrooms that are like playful workshops, places where we celebrate exploration and see mistakes as chances to learn.
Picture playgrounds that spark imagination and wonder, places where kids can build and create and connect with nature.
And let's all work to create communities that really value and support early childhood. Because when we invest in our youngest citizens, we're investing in all of our futures.
Couldn't agree more. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those minds curious and never stop exploring.